Welcome to the Future of Tech, the podcast where we dive into bold predictions, disruptive trends, and the technology shaping tomorrow. I'm your host, Sander, and today we're exploring the future of data. Not just how it's managed, but how it thinks, predicts, and maybe even decides. Our guest today is Gigi Levens, an expert in data architecture, analytics, and engineering, and with over a decade of experience helping companies turn raw data into valuable insights. She's a Microsoft certified data strategist, a Power BI trainer, and a recognized thought leader in AI-driven data solutions. We'll discuss the future of data architecture, the rise of AI in decision-making, data security in an era of deepfakes, and even whether human intuition will still have a place in data-driven businesses. All right, welcome to the show, Gigi.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today. And maybe to kick things off, can you tell us and the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Well, a little about myself. IT has always been present in my life growing up because my father already had a web development business. So my first summer vacation job was coding HTML. And from then on, it progressed to more formal roles in more data analytics. Then that naturally evolved to data engineering because, in data analytics, you're already working with set data, everything's prepared for you, and then you do your thing. And then I was interested with how does that process go? So that's why I made the move to data engineering, which naturally actually led me to data architecture. So more on the business processes, things like that as well. And that naturally evolved to also looking into data governance with how a big organization can handle data and things like that. So that's very me in a nutshell.
And what is it that you like about IT? What is it that triggers you? Because when I was younger, years ago, I actually visited different schools, and one of them was IT related, and I was just not happy. Looking around, I decided this is not what I'm going to do, right? Because it was very dry, right? So, and the examples were not very vivid. So, what is it that attracted you to IT?
For me, I really thought it was like solving small puzzles. And those puzzles became bigger and more complex, but they're still puzzles. And I like solving those and see what else can we do. Because yes, at first when you look at it, IT can be very rigid and very in the box. And then what I find is, okay, you solve the puzzle within the box, but then you look outside of the box and see what else can you do with it.
Yeah. And I agree. For me, I like the fact that it's, for me, I liked, and I still like math. And that's also, for me, it's like a puzzle. It's solving a puzzle. And that's the same with coding, basically. If you need to, it's something that you try to solve. All right. So today we'll explore the role of AI in data-driven decision-making and the future maybe of data privacy and maybe, I don't know, something about the tension between automation and intuition, right? Because obviously we are heading in that direction. So looking at how data management transformed and where we are going, how has your work in let's say the past decade evolved?
Well, I definitely see an uptake in automation in the beginning, there was a lot of handwork. Like you had to make the calculations yourself. And if, for a specific report, for example, and then if it's a report that's periodically being given out, say monthly or weekly, then every week and every month, you're stuck doing the same calculations. So that's already the first step that people say, hey, we can do this smarter. Let's try to automate this. And that's when you come in the automation process. Okay, the stuff we already used to do, how can we automate this? And I think we've been, stuck, maybe not in the correct word, but we've been mostly focused on automating existing things. Not only your own work, but also processes. Like, uh, for example, if you're a part of a chain in a process, then ideally you don't want the person after you don't want to explicitly need to tell the person, hey, I'm done with my thing, now it's your turn. No, right now we have systems that if somebody enters a customer profile, for example, then the next person automatically gets an email, hey, new information has been added, now it's your turn to verify or whatever.
Yeah.
And right now, what you're seeing is that we're now trying to think one step further. Okay, now we've automated a lot of things. Not everything's perfectly automated, but it works good enough. What's the next step? And that's when you see things like ChatGPT and Gen AI and come into play, because now we're actually trying to see, okay, we've automated our stuff. But we know already what's coming. Is it possible for us to train a machine, a model that helps us predict what we have to do next and even do that for us?
Yeah.
And
That's-
exactly, yes. But it's been very much focused on a lot of automation the past decade, I would say.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people think something is AI, but it's actually automation.
Exactly.
But it is not the same. It's just basically automation. Obviously, is determining in what order specific tasks need to be done.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And AI actually needs to interpret things.
Yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
automation involves also some orchestration, because sometimes you have different tasks that needs to be done on parallel sometimes. So that's also, so you see, definitely automation orchestration is also important. And what we're now heading is beyond that.
Yeah, exactly. And so when, because obviously we're talking about your past work as well, and also looking at, let's say, in data and how they use data, and not only in automation. If you look at when companies talk about being data driven, what does that mean? Maybe not all listeners understand that. What does that mean?
Well, for most business, being making decisions based on data, being data driven, means that they have all the facts, data. Right now, I'm using those two interchangeably when I'm making the decision. So that means that, for example, if they're looking, say you're an investment bank and you're looking to invest in a new company, a startup, instead of going to the startup and say, oh, I really like these people and their product is, I don't know, but let's do it. Being data driven means you ask the company, what are your facts? What are your prognosis on revenue? How is your roadmap for your product development? You really come with the facts, and so you can make an informed decision based on that. And it can be arranged very much like, for example, my example just now with having facts. But you can also look at your company's own performance, for example. If you say, well, there's a certain business unit that is underperforming. Well, if you're not data driven, you might say, well, it's underperforming, let's reorganize and let's get rid of it. But you can also check the data of that business unit and say, okay, well, what's the problem? Why is it underperforming? Is it something else we can do to boost the performance first? If so, I think for a lot of companies, is making better and informed decisions.
And so then what is that, if you look at, the job as a data professional and obviously business leaders, what is the biggest? You have a certain way of thinking, a certain way of you have motivation why you need the data. What is the biggest disconnect between, let's say, data professional and business leaders?
Um, I think there are a couple of things. I think the first thing is that business still thinks of IT, not just data, as just press on a button and it's there, which unfortunately doesn't work like that. If it did, we would not have this job. It's also a process, and we also need the business to give us input to actually be able to deliver correct data. And a lot of business is like, just give us the data and, don't bother us too much with questions. And from a data professional standpoint, it's like, I know my data, I know the process, but the business has the real knowledge of what does this data mean? How should I interpret this? And what is correct data and what's not? And I know probably a lot of people will disagree, but correctness of data is also very important because, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, exactly.
When as a data professional, I don't always know what defines garbage. I need the business to tell me, well, this is garbage, this isn't, and then me as a data professional can automate the garbage disposal within the data.
Yeah.
Also a bit of a disconnect, like the businesses just press a button and the data comes out, and as data professionals we're like, no, but we need you in this process,
Yeah.
will help us understand the data and make sure that what we use give you back is correct.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And so, what is then maybe a recent project where data told a story that nobody expected? Because obviously, data tells you a lot of things, maybe things you didn't expect or no one expected. Do you have any interesting stories for the audience?
Interesting stories. Yes, I've done some IoT in the past, and for listeners, IoT, still pretty niche, is Internet of Things, and basically has sensors in the real world that generate data, and on that data you can do cool things. Um, and with this specific project, we had sensors on the environment within office buildings, and we could see not only health levels of the building, like how much CO2, how much light, how much noise, but also how the building was performing, like, for example, a lot of energy consumption or not, and which area of building people preferred, because we also had presence sensors. And I thought it was quite surprising that, from a office management perspective and the interior design, we were like, "Oh, this would probably be the best used part of the entire building." And then when we looked at the data, specifically on presence, we were like, "Okay, there are hardly any people coming here. Why?" And then we looked at other factors, and then we're like, "Oh, but even though there's lots of light in there and CO2 is great, it's actually pretty warm there." And then we check, oh, because it was a wall of glass on that side, and it was on the south side of the building, so the sun really started baking the people. So it's so we thought, okay, maybe invest in some sunscreens, create shady areas there, and then you see really an uptake in people actually coming there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that's something that you probably wouldn't see easily just by walking in the room. But
Exactly. 'Cause if you just walk Exactly. If you just walk by, you're like, "Oh, it's quiet. Okay, maybe it's just that time of day that I'm there." But we with the data, we actually saw it's actually a trend, it's a pattern.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And so, what do you think of then? Maybe what if I would say that most kill companies they don't need more data, but they need better questions? What do you think?
I agree. I agree. Because I think a lot of companies don't realize how much data they already have, and they how much data they already have, and they usually use data in a very isolated ways. Like, for example, if there's data about finance, it's only used for financial things. But if you would, again, within the company with all the GDPR regulation stuff, but if you would combine that, for example, with HR and maybe your canteen data, then you already see other stuff appearing like, oh, wow,
Yeah.
maybe there's something we're experiencing a big loss here, but according to HR, hardly any people use the canteen, or because the canteen is only stocking cold sandwiches. You
Yeah.
know, things like that, and that's actually more of a mindset change. It's like, don't think just within your domain within the company, but also think, what's my neighbor in HR doing, and how can we maybe combine and also cooperate in that.
That's an interesting take as well. Yeah, for sure. And so obviously slowly making the shift to AI, and maybe now slowly AI's role in, let's say, the decisions that we previously based basically, by looking at it ourselves, maybe analyzing the data. Now AI can actually help us with that. And maybe they can even make the decisions without checking. It's just almost set it and forget it. So uh, you have worked closely with AI powered analytics. How autonomous is data now becoming?
It's getting there. It's not completely autonomous. It still needs a person to actually tell it what to do. Uh, I see that's very crudely speaking, because you can make very advanced models and they can already go pretty far. Uh, ChatGPT is already a perfect example on, just give it a prompt and whatever they did in the back actually spits out amazing things on not just text, but also images and videos and whatnot.
It's getting better and better.
Definitely. So it's getting definitely better and better. But I do think saying that completely being able to remove the human part of it is still very, very, very premature. And the reason why is no matter how much we automate, no matter how much an AI can predict and decide, it's always dealing with humans at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And you can make a model and HR can use it to say, well, based on tons of data, this person is underperforming and maybe you should fire that person. But it always pays to have somebody talk to the person, ask what's going on with that person.
Yeah.
And see, maybe that person is just not fit for the role, or maybe it has a lot of personal things. Because I mean, I don't put any personal stuff in my company systems. I don't know about our listeners, but there are a lot of things my company doesn't know about me. And if you lose that human connection, um, I really feel like it 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 really actually is a disadvantage then.
Yeah. Yeah, and that I agree. I agree. But maybe at some point, so what role should you? Let's assume that at some point AI gets a better understanding of people, of emotions, of how, or what happened maybe in your personal life. Like Google, obviously, Google knows so much about you. Google probably knows, that women are pregnant before the women know it themselves, just with basic research results. And especially when you combine that with AI, you might be able to predict things. You might be able to see it before someone else sees it. So let's say that if AI can identify trends or something happening faster than we can, what role do we still play? Is it only an ethical one, or is it?
Definitely an ethical one. Because sometimes they make the joke like IT people or medical professionals, certain of them are like, we can do it. Why shouldn't we? And then the ethical people are like, we can do it, but why should we? Like, what are the more implications? Where's the privacy, for example? Like, what part of is still mine? What is me, and what is someone else's property? Um, so I really think when it comes to ethics, there's always a role in humans. Like, think like, okay, we can do it, but should we? If we do it, what are the implications? A very good example now is a certain social media platform that now has bought a lot of apps, and it was originally for classmates to stay connected to each other. And now it's people are actually thinking, well, it can influence election results. And then like, oh, and that's purely based on it knows all your preferences, it knows where your places are you're checked in. And then it's a question like, okay, technically we can do this. You can, but ethically should we? And that's I think a part that's very important. And there was also another thing also is sometimes trends can always appear in data, but deciding to do something with the trend, I don't think that's something an AI, no matter how advanced, could actually say yes or no. For example, if the trend is all these countries are making more nuclear weapons, the logical AI decision would be we need to make more. Whereas people would say, well, this is actually not what we're aiming for. Maybe we should try to have some peace pacts and, try to de escalate stuff.
Yeah.
In that sense, there's always, when you say computers can make decisions based on trends and data and historical, that's true. But you always have the human component.
Yeah.
We, and of course, what people in finance know this term, the black swans. Like, what are those once in a lifetime things that just happen and there's no logical explanation why it actually happened?
Yeah. Yeah. And so, what would be the risk then if businesses follow, let's say, AI driven strategies blindly?
Blindly, I think they no human factor, what I already stated, but also AI is only as good as the person or team behind it. I mean, we haven't touched about, for example, biases. Is you of course you have cultural biases, like um, you have entire, for example, the Andrew Tate movement. I'll just dub it as that. Imagine they come with an AI. I can already imagine what they think of me.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you just blind and and of course this is a very on the nose example of what we do not want, but it can be a lot more subtle. Like there have already been a lot of articles saying how face recognition, which is also an AI, is negatively biased towards people of color, black people, because it's mostly trained on white faces because the research teams are mostly white. So those types of things that creep in the models. And
But is it an ethical issue or is that a cultural one?
that is, for example, this specific example I did is a cultural one, but you also have technical issues. For example, a very powerful AI also requires a very powerful hardware. Like I know we're going towards the quantum computing and stuff, but most of us are not there yet. Most of us have just a simple computer, maybe some cloud computing. We don't want it too expensive, so we don't have that much processing power, and that itself is already a constraint on how powerful and how much data a model can process and actually, ge- further generate itself.
Yeah.
And that's a technical bias, as in within the technical constraints, what is that model being able to do? And then it also either the team or the model itself, if it's like a very advanced neural network or something, can decide, well, I don't have the capacity or enough input to actually make this decision. But based on what I do have, I'll make another decision.
Yeah.
And then that other decision could be vastly different than if it had other inputs or more processing power or even other design.
Yeah. And so, it, going sliding back to, let's say, maybe AI and AI helping us in decision making. Uh, what do you think in 5 years? If I would predict this in 5 years, AI would be on executive boards, but maybe not as tools, but as advisors. What do you think?
Mm, could be, could be. I wouldn't say it's not a complete no for me. Um, the reason why is, of course, a lot of people know Siri from Apple and the Cortana from Microsoft. I think Google also has its AI, and they already have functions like if you say, "Hey Google," if you have that thing in your house, like, "What's the weather?" And you spout out the weather, and then you decide, "Okay, well, it's a bit chilly because the temperature is 10 degrees, so I'll do an extra layer." That's already one form of giving advice. And, what's the weather? Yeah, you know, can check an app. But
Yeah.
if you give more input saying, well, this board meeting is about a long-term strategy of this company based on XYZ factors, and all the departments given their data in. What Microsoft, for example, with Copilot is already trying within Power BI is that you actually type in a regular person question, like in normal syntax, and that Power BI, based on the data sets it has, gives you a normal person answer in running sentences.
Yeah.
So we're already on the cusp of already doing that. And in 5 years, if the technology develops like this, it always goes exponentially. It always goes faster than you actually expect. And then that's why I say it's not a no for me, but a complete yes to saying, well,
Yeah.
I forgot what we there,
In my
but
experience, time flies. So 5 years, it's getting there fast.
yeah,
So maybe that's too fast. In 10 years, I would definitely really,
yes,
like,
yes.
if you look at quantum computing, if you look at how fast things will go, maybe it's too expensive now, but over time will become cheaper. AI will become more intelligent and will be able to help us more. And those two together will speed up the process. I've
Yes.
had discussions with people in the past as well, and they were making predictions. And I'm talking about predictions that were made 20 years ago, about in 30 years' time, which actually happened in 10 years' time. So yeah, it's just, we're going faster than maybe we predict.
Definitely. Although I do want to note that one of the things that is a bit different of like what we're in now in terms of how fast things go is, for example, we do have more external factors influencing IT. A very good example is, for example, climate change, the whole CO2 neutral thing and energy consumption. I mean, running an AI efficiently takes a lot of energy, like a lot of data centers, a lot of things like that. And I'm not saying that will be all the development will put on a halt because we need to look out for our CO2, but it's also a consideration that company needs to take into account. Like, okay, what's my energy consumption if I want to have to do this? Because and this again, it's a human factor. If AI says just let's go for it, climate change be damned, and I'm a human, I'm like, I would like to be alive. I would like to breathe some clean air.
But it also depends, obviously, how we produce energy, right? So now it's a specific kind of way, and do we need to do that or have those same ways in the future? Or can we make that smarter as well? And then things change again and again and again. So we might, over time, it will probably improve and evolve. Yeah, so that's an interesting one. Okay, so maybe we can switch slightly to, let's say, another topic, which I think is interesting, especially when dealing with data. We obviously, first of all, we have data that needs to be protected using AI, for example, and trusting AI completely with this. It's scary, right? To say the least. Um, and next to that, nowadays with AI, not only with AI, but you see it with AI a lot now, and more. You see deepfakes, you see um, uh, something that is not true, right? But is presented as the truth. So it affects, you mentioned it already, how we maybe vote, right? Or it influences us in the political system or in whatever we perceive. So, since this is evolving and it's evolving rapidly, I mean, OpenAI just released a new version, obviously, of generating their images, which are much better than the previous version.
Yeah.
It's bizarre how quickly that is going. Um, how do businesses actually verify what is real?
Yes, and in that sense, I think one of the principles within, for example, data governance immediately pops to mind is, for example, every piece of data, no matter if it's a text, an image, a CSV file, whatever it is, always carries metadata. And I well, I could be wrong, but as far as I know, metadata is very, very hard to fake. So if you have an image that you're like, I'm not so sure about this. If you can one way or another access the metadata of that image, I'm pretty sure that you can then see which program that image is on, of what photo, or if it's an actual photo made with a phone or with a photo camera, you can actually see which make and model it is.
Yeah.
That's already a thing. Like, personally, I would say if you have access to metadata, check the metadata. When it comes to deepfakes, little fun fact is deepfakes, people cannot stick out their tongue, especially if they do a live deepfake. It's not possible.
That's still what.
If you're talking to a person and you think you're being catfish, ask them to stick out their tongue.
That's a nice one. I'm going to remember that one.
So if they do, then it's probably the real person. If they don't, it's probably the
They're going to probably gonna look at you and say, what is this question?
I know, right?
Just please just do it.
Yeah, exactly. But so there are always ways to find out, but it's very difficult. And the more advanced it goes, the more you need to educate people on these possibilities. Like, when I was growing up, Facebook just came in. So I grew up with not having Facebook, and then Facebook being there, and then Facebook growing, and now my generation's like, Facebook's for boomers. Let's go to Instagram or TikTok.
Yeah, exactly.
But there are also, but you definitely see, like, I'm happy my high school period was not on Facebook. But the younger generation, the Gen Zers, for example, and the Gen, I think Alpha's the next one after that.
Yeah.
They really grew up in this environment, and they do develop some kind of intuition on it.
Yeah.
But I do think that in schools, they really need to think about how can we include media literacy in the broader ways. It's not just what you see on TV or even newspapers or some, but also social media. What do you see it? How do you consume it? What are the ideas behind it? Because you really need to develop someone's critical thinking
Yeah.
to be able to handle all this new stuff.
Yeah.
Because it used to be whatever's in the newspaper, that's the truth. But I know we're past that point already.
Yeah. Well, it's uh, you always need to question: is this real? Yes or no?
Exactly. Yes.
You don't know. Okay, and so then looking at the biggest blind spots, the biggest security blind spot that a company has with its data, what would that be? What is it that most companies tend maybe to miss or forget?
I think the biggest blind spot of companies would definitely also be their employees. Why? Because a system, you can always hire the ethical hacker to try to hack your system, get all the security kinks out, patch them, and you're good to go. But again, with your employees, if you don't teach them or help them with how do you spot a phishing mail,
Yeah.
what is spam? That's still the biggest vulnerability. And with AI, even spam becomes more realistic.
Yeah.
Even phishing becomes harder to spot.
Yeah. Previously, you could see it because the language was not well enough. It was not well written.
Yeah, or the URL is not just right. There are tips and tricks, but those tips and tricks are also slowly vanishing.
Yeah,
And of course, you can have AI in there to help you with that. That is definitely one of the things that AI will be a perfect tool because it will also evolve with it. But then again, if an employee clicks on the phishing mail and gives out its information,
yeah,
there you go.
yeah. And I agree. I agree, and it's getting harder and harder for people to detect. So maybe you need tools to actually help us out. In this, it should actually maybe use AI to spot fake
Yeah.
AI content use. Yeah,
Yeah, actually, just this week I received a message like you have messages in your quarantine. I was like, quarantine? What's that? And then Bray, there's a new feature that
yeah.
within Outlook that actually quarantines messages. It thinks it's spam, and then you can just filter out. Oh, this is
Whether you want it, yes or no. Yeah,
yeah.
I know.
So mostly like an antivirus, but just for your email.
Yeah. And do you think then that companies, I don't know, big and or small, are ready for let's say this is what is coming, and obviously maybe even um, there will be some regulations regarding AI activation and GDPR. Obviously, do you think we are ready for the future?
No, I don't think so.
So what are the things that they need to change or need to update? So
Um. Well, I think it's mostly a problem with well, okay. I mean, let me just give it some real thought how I can word it. Um, because what I'm about to say is not constrained to, for example, company size. It's really about the company culture. Is how important do you think it is? Because running the business is always important,
yeah,
and usually all the other stuff is a nice to have. How first you need to get this off the nice to have list because it's a priority, and especially when it comes to you, if they find that you're not according to the regulatory things, you get a very big fine.
yeah,
That's one thing. Then it's also, I think leaders within the company, within industries, also need to be proactive, saying, okay, this is a completely new field. We will We will make some decisions. We might fail the first try, but we take that risk because we need to move forward and we need to be decisive. And if the decision was incorrect, we'll do it again. You see, a lot of times and this is why I say it's company culture, not per se company size, is some businesses are really into, oh, let's have a meeting about this. And they talk an hour with a group of people, and then they don't really have a consensus, and then it gets tabled, and then somebody's like, oh, but we haven't made a decision. Let's have another meeting.
yeah,
And then the actual decision never comes.
yeah,
So then you almost want to say like just feed the rules to an AI and let the AI make our policy.
yeah.
For example.
The AI can absolutely help at least get you into the right
Yeah,
direction.
exactly.
And there, obviously, you need to agree to it, but it's as good, as the information you put in. What do you actually want? We need to comply, but we also have a company culture, and we also have core values, and you actually need to put those core values in to get the right outcomes.
Exactly.
And it's the same with the meeting, obviously. So, and also getting to results could be one of your core values. If everyone believes that, the meeting will end with outputs.
Exactly. And so that's the thing. It's like you have to have prioritize and be decisive to be able to do that. That's one of the reasons. And also to be very fair, a lot of registration is quite unclear. Like for example, even with the GDPR, like the first couple of years, we were like, "But what is it actually? What data does fall under it? What isn't?" Even if the law comes to about, there's still some wrinkles to be ironed out before companies can actually take action to be compliant with it.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree. Okay, and then so maybe what do you think about? We've been talking about analyzing data obviously in general, and how companies use data and how business leaders use data. We think of the mind bender, and we don't analyze data; data analyzes us.
That's a good one. I like that one. Um, I think it's a circle. Because we in this sense is us. We are data producers. We produce data, whatever data we have, we analyze, and then we learn about ourselves or each other or whatever that we're studying, but we also learn a bit about ourselves. And that again produces data. Yeah. Because what we learn influences our behavior, which then, you know, gives us other stuff.
Yeah, and we produce data on a daily basis on every step that we take.
I mean, a prime example is if you have a smartwatch like I have now. It's like, then, you're walking and then my step counter says, oh, yeah, I'm 5,000 step and my goal is 10,000. Then already my behavior changes like, oh, but I really need to have those 5,000 extra steps in. So it's like a circle.
It's analyzing you and you are analyzing it, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
All right. So let's then continue maybe a little bit about data visualization and storytelling. I think that's also an interesting subject. Um, and we will obviously want to make data understandable. So that's what we already do. Try to get insights with graphs. So with everything that we have now, dashboard, hopefully people understand all the dashboards, right? So and on the other hand, maybe you have some sort of storytelling. So what separates a good data visualization from great data storytelling?
Well, data visualization is very straightforward. I have data. Here's a bar graph, which literally visualizes what the table is saying.
Yeah.
Storytelling comes into play when you add context. What's the graph about? Why is this graph interesting? Why should I look at this graph and what is this graph telling me? And then the storytelling comes more like do you make it more relatable to people? A good example again with the IoT. If you say, well, this building consumption is X amount and it has solar panels which produce X amount. That's a table. Then you put it into maybe a donut chart saying 100% consumption. This part is solar. This part is, from the metering. It becomes storytelling. You say, well, because of the solar panels, we have this much less data consumption, which equals to if we would plant X amount of trees. Or this is equal to how many round trips to Paris with the car.
Yeah. I have exactly those examples, with solar panels that I have. I actually said, hey, you planted X amount of trees.
Yeah, and we all know that you didn't actually plant those trees, but it really puts it in perspective because it dumbs down data what could be very complex to easy understandable things, actually engage people. Like if you say, well, if you do, for example, if you always program your lights to turn off at 11 o'clock and only turn on at 6 if it's still dark,
Yeah.
you can save one round trip to Thailand with an airplane. I mean, that then people are like, oh wow, because everybody is already aware of the carbon footprint that you have when you hop on a plane and go to a exotic destination. I mean,
Yeah.
but if you just say, well, it saves you energy.
Yeah.
Okay, it saves.
Yeah. It's fun.
Maybe if you tell, well, it saves me this amount in my finances. That's also an incentive, but it's still a number.
Then obviously also the second question is it true? Yes or no? Right. But the question we already had, is it real?
Yeah,
But
but
the fact get the information, does something to your brain, as you already gave a good example. Everyone wants to enjoy, time off somewhere, or go on a holiday or whatever you like to do. If you have more time or more money or more whatever, do it.
Right.
And you can visualize that. That's, or at least use storytelling maybe to actually explain it. Right. The information that I shared for my solar panels, it's actually basically both, because obviously it's visualization, but it also has a number. It says X amount of trees.
Yeah,
But
exactly. And of course, what we are now having, it really it gauges people, because people are they get intrigued, they relate, they want to know more, they start asking questions, and that's what you ultimately want. You want to have a very good story that is supported by data, but still gets the message across.
yeah,
Because if I give you a report with only bar charts, you're like, okay, and
yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. And it has to say something. So what do you think then are the best tools to use for business? Is it the Power BI or the Tableau or anything else?
well, maybe the listeners already realized I am a Microsoft girly, so I would of course do Power BI, but I would always say choose what fits you or the company within you work best. Which I mean is, if your company is already very adept in Tableau, hey, bust out your Tableau skills, because the tool is a way to help you get your message across. It isn't the message.
Yeah, yeah,
And of course, Power BI does stuff. Tableau has other features, and click through. You always also have things. And it's, what do you need? Because there's tools need to be used.
yeah.
Not
And obviously, tools, as you mentioned, should fit you, or should fit the company, or should fit, whatever purpose you have. So the, it's obviously something that you use, and you need to be comfortable using it. All right, and so maybe one more item on this. Yeah. How can companies then use or turn raw data into narratives that drive real action? Because we already mentioned, you can see how many trees you planted, right? Or any other storytelling that maybe is compelling and interesting. Uh, but we need input maybe, or we need something that actually drives decision making and real action. So
yeah.
have you any ideas how companies, obviously this is your field of work, so how do you turn that data into something that is actually actionable?
Well, of course, you have two parts that we touched upon way in the beginning. You have the data professionals and you have the business. And I really think, and I really believe that it's really a cooperation or co-creation between the two units. I don't see it as two separate entities, and you go in that corner and I go in that corner and we all do our separate things. Because again, we have, as a data professional, I know how to get the data within whatever platform you are. I know how to process it. I know how to do calculations. I know how to make beautiful pictures from it. But I don't always know what it means. I don't always know what to look out for. I don't know what the garbage is. And I've been in different sectors. Like, okay, if you've worked a year in finance in a bank, you start to grasp the finance bank stuff. But but the person with the more functional knowledge, as we call it within the domain, is the business. Because they work with it, they make decisions, they have the questions, they know the process which it is that they use this data for. So if they don't provide me that I need this type of data, it means this, and this is incorrect or not incorrect, then I cannot provide them with the things they need. So that's why I really think it's a co-creation, cooperation situation.
Yeah, and obviously they need to know, uh, based on what output basically they take decisions.
Exactly, because I do think, and maybe not everybody will agree with me, but I do think that the business does need to have a basic understanding of what data or IT is doing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they need to know Python, but they do need to understand that if this number is, for example, when I multiply X with C, I mean,
Yeah.
they do need to have a basic understanding of
Yeah.
these are the calculations involved.
Yeah.
They don't need to do math. They just need to understand there's math happening.
Yeah, they need to understand maybe the flow and what's happening and what's happening where.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also,
Most like core of the business or the core of the process.
exactly. Yes. Because I really do think, I really think it's not my job to fully 100 understand what, for example, a tax consultant tells its clients. I don't need to know what law, why this number is the way it is. Just tell me how to make that number.
Yeah.
And why it is in that way. And then the tax consultant
Yeah.
actually gives the meaning to it and say why is it correct.
Yeah.
How do we need to act on it?
Yeah. And basically, so companies should first maybe determine, most probably will already have some information based on whatever they have been doing. But first, some idea of what numbers and what data do we use to decide upon anything or to take action. If specific numbers are too low or too high or whatever we do, then you take action. So first you need to know what are these numbers and then how do we get to these numbers, right? And then obviously you come in or any other, data specialist comes in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. And so, I heard one comment not that long ago, and I think it's an interesting one, and I'm curious your thoughts on that. It was something like most dashboards are built for showing off, not for decision making. What do you think?
I do agree. I'm definitely gonna remember that one. No, but I do agree because dashboards, they always want to have insights, graphs, KPIs. You always hear KPIs, KPIs. It's their own drill of KPIs.
Yeah.
And then when you actually look at dashboard usage, it, not a lot of people look at that.
It's probably too much data, too much non-information, information that you don't use.
And exactly. And in my experience, the biggest disconnect between dashboard usage often uh is because the way the dashboard came to be. And for example, if in most beginning of the projects, you ask the business what do they want? They don't know. They want everything. So then as data professional, you think, well, if I was that person in their shoes, I might want this. And then you start building a dashboard. And then in some projects you just give the dashboard and that's the end of it. But then you really need to push, and that's what I always try to do. You need to push, like, give me feedback. Is this dashboard even useful for you? And that's why I say is, it's always a cooperation or a co-creation with business and data. It's I can have a lot of assumptions, but that doesn't mean those are correct. Because they say like having assumptions makes an ass of you and me.
Yeah.
It's basically that. And it goes the other way around because the business sometimes have this idea in their head.
Yeah.
They can't really, not always can articulate it well. And then you as a data professional has to ask those questions to get it out of the business. And then that's when mock-ups come about with the UX designer that makes all these fancy mock-ups and say, is this what you want? And then 90% of the time it's like, oh, was that what I meant? No, actually I want this.
Yeah.
Or actually I want that. Or, so that's why I say that, yes, a lot of dashboards exist, are not being used, and therefore are not being used within decision making.
Yeah.
And especially the higher you go in the hierarchy of the company, the more it's KPI driven, the more they just want to have a PowerPoint sheet summary of whatever's going on.
Yeah.
And then the actual dashboard actually just sits there.
Yeah.
which is a
Yeah.
pity. Which is a pity because it's like a lot of work, a lot of money, a lot of thoughts.
Yeah.
Okay.
I fully agree. I fully agree. Yeah, I've had dashboards in the past with too many KPIs. Thinking at the moment you create dashboards that are useful, but in the end you only need a couple of KPIs, which are the most important ones. That's the only thing
Yeah,
you need.
yeah, and you, well, in a couple of years ago, I was very surprised, but now it's for me a no-brainer. A lot of people actually prefer receiving what they need periodically on email.
Yeah.
Like instead of a fancy dashboard with all these donut charts and bar charts, they prefer just getting an email in the inbox.
300.
Please summary. These are your stats. Yes,
It's also easier, right? You don't have to take action. You just get it, and it comes.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, okay, so let's maybe look a little bit at the future of say your job or anyone maybe data related. Will maybe automation, AI, and things like that create roles or kill them? Obviously, and what happens, when AI advances more and more and more? What do you think? Will AI replace data engineers and analysts, or maybe add a hand of stuff?
Mm, I would say if you look at the coming 5, maybe even 10 years, I would say enhance. Because the role that your job changes. Like if before I would be doing a lot of data entry, for example, and then engineer and then analyze, then it gets automated. And then, I don't need to do data entry anymore. I don't need to code anymore. I just need to analyze. If they also analyze my data, then I need to check, is the analysis correct?
Yeah.
Is it usable? Then I can make decisions. If a part of the decision making is also in the AI, then I have to check, well, do I agree with this decision? Does this decision fit within the vision of the company and the mission, for example, or in the broader scope of things? Because
Yeah.
of course, you can build a very advanced AI that can, you know, take into account all these different factors, but then it has potentially technical constraints. For example, does a company have the amount of money to spend on this AI that can oversee everything?
Yeah.
Because that's, in if money was never an issue, if people working was never an issue, you can dream big, aim for the sky and the stars in the moon even, and you can make it happen. But in the real world, you always have constraints, and then you have to look. Okay, yes, AI can do that, but can I afford it? Do I even want it to do that? And in that sense, I think the roles will change into a more of a controlling role, like supervision role, probably. Not less hands-on actually coding, but maybe code review, or if the code has been reviewed and has been dealt with, is it really being dealt with? So I do see a shift in, what you're actually doing your job, but complete say, well, this job is obsolete. I don't think so. Not in the coming 10 years. Definitely not the coming 10 years.
Yeah. And so, what skills would be critical maybe for the next generation of better professional?
I would still recommend coding because, coding is the code is the basis of everything. Like, say if an AI goes haywire, you need a coder to, reel it back in. So that's definitely a thing. Definitely also critical thinking.
Yeah.
Um, what we also already touched upon earlier, like the ethics of it. Is it correct? Do we want it? Because now you don't need to think about how do I make it work because it already works. It's now how can we make it work for me, for the company, for its purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. All right. And so what, if you look at companies right now, what should they, uh, or how should they upskill their workforce to stay ahead?
That's a very good question. I would say that even before, because I will touch upon the workforce, definitely. But before even going to the workforce, also say what as a company you want to be able to achieve. Because there you see sometimes a disconnect between a company wants something, but they don't put the how do you do it in English? They don't have the vision like in 5 or 10 years I want to be there,
Yeah.
and then chop it up and say what do I have to do now to get there in 5 or 10 years. I think that's if your company has the goal to have a finance company run 100% on AI in 10 years, say, which is, it's a feasible amount of time, then you have to know, okay, but then, and I know what the status of my finance company is here, which is maybe stuck in data entry even.
Yeah.
Then you know, what do I need to do? Okay, now all these people who do data entry, I need to upscale them to become coders. I need to get in some data scientists for the models.
Yeah.
So in that sense, and that's different per company. So I cannot say, well, all IT employees need to know Python. Because my preferred language is Python and SQL.
Yeah.
It's really dependent on the company. If the company says, well, we want to do 10, as I said, in 10 years, finance completely AI, and we do it in Python, then you say, okay, let's get our people there. So in 10 years, everybody knows enough Python, knows enough statistics, and has data science knowledge to be able to handle that.
Yeah.
But if you're more focused on natural languages, like I want to have a company that writes news articles based on voice input and it generates the text for me, that's a completely different skill set that you need to work towards.
It's a matter of looking ahead, basically.
Exactly. So you need to look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think that's a nice one. All right. And how about AI? Because I think maybe, as we discussed before, AI won't take your job, but the person who knows how to use AI might. Right? They will take your job. So if you don't, unless you disagree, maybe you have something deeper. Do you think that people need to know how to use AI in the future?
I think so. I think it's inevitable. Um, why? Because you already see, for example, in academia, when I was still a student a decade or so ago, you already had a thing about that you had like these programs checking for plagiarism. See how much Wikipedia did you copy in your paper?
Yeah.
So and that's because they realized, hey, this is new technology, the internet. People copy paste because they want to save themselves some work. We need
Yeah.
to have a control function to make sure it's actually their own work and not copy paste. The same goes with AI to a certain extent. Is um, if I don't use AI, I can write something myself, but it might not always be as well informed or as broad as an AI who can write itself and has access to the internet. So better for the initial information gathering, use the AI, let the AI write something. But you need to check yourself whether it's factually correct. Because again, the internet, everybody can put a blog post. And you can have an entire community with a lot of websites, all with high Google ranking saying the earth is flat.
Yeah.
Then the AI, ideally the AI would know, no, the earth is round, these are flat earthers, ignore. But if it's not there yet, then there's still a human person that needs to check that. And
Yeah.
it does save you a lot of time because then I can write that paper probably in maybe 1 hour, which would do another person maybe a week because of all of the research and all those things.
Yeah.
So it really and it could enhance your productivity. But again, really depends again where are you going? You see already, for example, in the United States, of course, you had all those you had a strike for the SAG writers because they really want rules on the use of AI and things like that because those are really creative jobs. And you see all this AI now is making pictures, making videos, writing texts. And sure, you can get websites from AI. Like if you put in, I have a WordPress thing and you want to have a nice template for it, AI can spit it out for you. But it cannot actually make the website work. That's where the web developer comes in.
Yep. Yep. I agree. I agree. And going back to whether you need to understand, obviously AI or how to use AI, I think it's inevitable as well, because at some point, if you don't understand it, and you don't know how to use it, you will be more expensive than someone who does, because someone who does understand it can be more productive, more quickly, do more, which actually lowers the cost of the amount of work done. So it doesn't mean, in my eyes, it doesn't mean that your work is going to be, uh, well, you don't have working, or work will change. The amount of output that we can do will change.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same when we got tractors,
Yeah.
working on the land. Yeah, people must have been afraid, I'm going to lose my job, but people still have jobs. It's just changing.
Yeah, and a lot of people right now are like still think of AI as this huge futuristic thing, but don't forget when in 5 or 10 years, adoption would be very different. Is for example, like now almost everybody has a smartphone. It's all
Yeah.
one panel, it's all glass or whatever material they use, and they all look the same. No matter which brand you have, it mostly looks the same. And if you don't have a smartphone, people start to looking at you like, "Huh, you don't have a smartphone?" It's weird. You don't see
Some
the
people who
opposite.
say, "Oh, I don't need that. I don't ever need that." Why?
And but the same with AI is at certain point, now AI is, maybe a bit clunky, not really user friendly. You need to know your technical stuff to be able to properly use it. You need some training. But as it develops, it will also be more intuitive. The adoption would be easier, and then everybody's using it. And then it's how well can you use it?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. All right. So maybe let's look ahead.
Mhm.
At do you think, if you can predict one major shift in, let's say, data and how we use data, in the next 5 years, what do you think? What will it be?
Mm. I think that there is a current trend which will still be there, which would be a lot more companies and organizations being interested in data governance. Why? Because data governance actually looks at metadata, but also life cycles of things, of IT things. Because IT develops very fast. Something you developed 5 years ago is obsolete now, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also, also looks at what does data mean? What can you do with it? What are the definitions? And I think that is very important because that is also what feeds these AI models. I mean, when I say what does data mean, you automatically think about language and natural language models. But it
Yeah.
also means like what kind of meaning can you attach to numbers? And that's what and to be very maybe a bit too technical, but like even an AI that produces images, an image is just pixels with hex numbers that represent colors.
Yeah.
In that sense, you already need to have a meaning. This hex color is the color red or magenta, and therefore I can put it there or there because this person in this picture I'm generating is wearing a red shirt. So that's also like, I definitely the AI and the models are going to have a flying start. I mean, the first step already is in chatbots, for example.
Yeah.
There's a really uptake in chatbots and that are turning very smart.
Yeah.
But also the underlying data needs to be well structured and governed in the sense because otherwise the models don't know what they're looking at and what they're using. Because and that's really needed if you want to have a smarter model because the first model you'll program, the second model will hopefully say, well, based on this programming and with these definitions, I could also do this.
Yeah.
That's the holy grail. That's where you want to go.
Adding value, right? So
That
more value.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why I do think that while the hype trends, what you will see is definitely on the AI basis and, the models and the chatbots and things like that. But when it
Yep.
comes to really making it happen with like professionals like me, we'll will probably be really seeing a move to data governance, probably more also towards more services as systems as services or platforms as services versus we build our own little platform. A very good example that it's been bombarded, especially since I'm in Microsoft coding, is Fabric, for example, which already has a lot of Microsoft components already bundled for you and with a bow wrapped on top, and here you go.
Yeah.
So we see it's going to shift less from we need to code it ourselves towards how do we manage, govern, and have the correct inputs to make these amazing things.
Exactly. It's still understanding, obviously, what is needed, what the output. You still need to understand how the flow works. You need to still need to understand where maybe an error might be, where, how to solve. It's still a puzzle, right? To get back to, where we started, it's still a puzzle, right?
Yeah,
It's still something that needs to be solved. Maybe you don't actually have the code yourself, so you're saving time, right?
exactly.
So we can speed up things. We can make things, we can make more things, more beautiful things, and faster. That's basically it. All right. So, and then what's next for you? Any exciting projects on the horizon?
I'm still where I'm at now, which is a Prodeo, which is a very interesting company to work at. Very steep learning curve when it comes to all things trains related. Um, and I would really much to stay. I'm staying within data. That's a given. Um, I really would like to see more. I'm more exploring now on the governance side, so data governance, data management, life cycles, metadata stuff like that. So the more boring, non-sexy headline stuff. But I would definitely want to dabble in AI at some point. Um, but for me personally, I'll probably wait a bit for it to be a bit more mature. Because I'm a data professional, but a data scientist with all the statistics. I bow my head to you. You guys are awesome.
All right. Okay. So, Gigi, thank you so much for joining us today on the future of tech. I think your insights of into the world of data, AI, and what it really means to make informative, actionable, decisions. I think that's great. And from we covered obviously dashboards that tell stories to AI-driven decisions, and maybe that challenge us, challenge people. So I think this conversation gave us a glimpse into the future that is already unfolding. So that's a nice one. And to our listeners, if today's episode got you thinking about how you use data in your organization, or the skills that you might need to thrive in the next decade, obviously you're not alone. I think the data revolution is already here. So, and it's only getting faster. Where can they find more information about you? Obviously, I'm going to share your LinkedIn profile in the comments or in the notes. And so let me know where can they find you otherwise?
Well, LinkedIn is a good place to start. I do also have a personal website. It's gigilevens.com, where you can contact me through.
Yeah.
And
in the notes as well, obviously.
yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. I had a very nice time. It's also very nice to also share my thoughts, and also being a bit challenged by the questions, which I like. In the day to day, you're just busy with your task, and everybody needs to finish, has a deadline or anything, and it's nice to have these kind of thought conversations.
Yeah. Well, you're very welcome, and thank you very much again. Thank you for joining us, and for people tuning in, thank you also very much
And until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and keep building the future.